All right. Welcome to another Cinphomaniac Rapid Fire. This time, reacting to the brand new, as of tonight, release of Marvel Studios' The Eternals, directed by Academy Award-winning filmmaker Chloé Zhao. Yes, that one. All right, guys, let's rip the Band-Aid off here. I'm freaking chomping at the bit to talk to everybody about this because I just saw the film in IMAX in Los Angeles here. I had to come in with the unfortunate pre-understanding that this film is not doing well critically for the first time in Marvel history. It's a Rotten Tomatoes score. Now, look, Rotten Tomatoes, there's a lot of sort of conception about what it is and what it isn't and what impact it's meant to play. Obviously, it is without a doubt significant that this is the first Marvel film to fall below that number. I don't know if it's since somehow magically gone back up. Who knows? It was like 58%. So just barely below that 60% cut. But either way, it's significant, right? Especially a film that's supposed to be this big film directed by an Academy Award-winning director. I mean, you can tell this is the opposite of what they wanted. They were expecting critical acclaim and the audience to really respond to it. In fact, they probably were more worried that audiences wouldn't like the more sort of, as we're going to discuss, languid, kind of methodical pacing and emphasis on character and discussion as opposed to action and all that rest. But it ended up seeming like at the best we can hope for at this point is that it's the opposite, that audiences fucking love this movie. And believe me, I'll say it right now, the audience that I just saw the film with seemed to be pretty into it with their claps and cheers and excitement. Granted, this is a Thursday night first screening audience, so it's definitely the diehards and most sympathetic people in there. But yeah, where do I stand on it? And how do I feel? Because, like, look, I'll also say about the critics is I don't want to speak for them. In fact, this is the last I'll mention it, other than to say this. My worry going in this film, or like my sort of reaction to when I heard the news, was like, is this critics punishing Marvel or punishing Zhao? And what I mean is, like, I know that sounds crazy, but like, it was one thing when Black Panther comes out and it's Coogler, because I think of Coogler as this big auteur, but I'm not sure everyone else did at the time. And they're like, oh, you have this big Academy Award-winning filmmaker, and now you're trying to make Marvel movies serious and emotional. We got used to just kind of giving you a write-off review, being like, oh, it's fun, it's Marvel, whatever, I'm into it, I guess, or I'm not. It's the death of the film industry, but whatever. We'll give it that, kind of just passing grade, just to say whatever. Let's move on to the movies we really care about. But now you're trying to mix and match that. You're trying to take from us our Chloé Zhao, our precious Nomadland filmmaker. And you know what? We're going to let her, and you know it. Now, if you really care about the health of the film industry, or what I think could be a good sign of something to come up with Eternals, then you find this to be troubling, because reality is this is how we're going to unfortunately get cinema from here on out. And I'd rather it be good than not. I'd rather people like Chloé Zhao open Marvel up to taking more chances and making more interesting films, even if it's still in their universe. So I'll say, yes, I might have that bias coming in, but man, oh man, I really like this movie. I mean, I guess let's just say that now. I really like this film. I think that, there are certain things to perhaps quibble with. I think the first hour or so, I was starting to get the worry, like, oh, maybe this is what they mean. It's not only slow, it's the scenes and tone just kind of shift a little bit too much here and there. The narrative structure is I get what they were trying to do, but I think it was probably not the best way to do it. I wonder if they considered a version where they went through all the past stuff and then just did the Marvel Studios opening fanfare like 35 minutes into the movie and then went from there. I think that probably would have been better, to be honest. But no, they kind of did the first little opening and then sort of went back and forth with flashbacks for the first half of the movie. About that said, those quibbles aside, honestly, my God, did this film work with what Chloé Zhao brought to it? The film looks beautiful, not just in like, oh, we're going to steal a couple Malick-y looks. Like, no, the film really found its own language, its own grammar within kind of obviously taking inspiration from that stuff, but just the way the costumes themselves look in that world, that's not something Malick would have shot or could have shot or would shoot, right? It actually authentically fits. and performance as well. Like this film really does take its time with its characters and focusing on dialogue and the relationships. And yes, there are a lot of characters. I think that's another thing maybe that weighs the film down, at least in some people's minds. But I think it made it work. I mean, once upon a time we used to do X-Men movies, and hopefully we'll do them again and do them actually good. And Eternals to me sets a new template for how to do that. I know everyone gives Marvel credit for taking the time to introduce each hero and then team them up, and that makes sense. But they also made Guardians of the Galaxy. You can introduce a family of characters and make that work. And I don't think Eternals does it maybe as well as Guardians 1, but pretty damn well. I really cared for all the Eternals. I will have to talk about the post-credits scene though before I go here. So when I'm ready to talk about that, I'll give the big spoiler warnings, and then we'll move on. But I'm not going to spoil the plot of the Eternals itself right now. So yeah, I thought that it really worked. There were multiple times, I shit you not, and I'm not the type of person who feels this way. This is going to out me, but I actually kind of felt emotional. I actually kind of teared up because the beautiful film language being used in tandem with the performances and actors taking it seriously, even when they have to, and this is a quibble with the screenplay I have, they keep saying each other's fucking Eternals names, which definitely feels like a studio note. We need to make sure people know the names and that it's Athena, not Athena. And it's like, okay, calm down. That was you could feel it when the studio or the producers were kind of forcing little things in there. The script was forcing little things in there that were not of a piece with the rest of the vibe. But I think Chloé Zhao took it in stride. And another thing to keep in mind is like the way they were able to make the sort of real life location shooting and the serious approach to the actors and the handheld camera work and the steady cam work with visual effects. This is not some cutty, choppy Marvel movie like we're thinking of it. They use long shots, they use long takes, and the camera moves, and this effects just feel seamless every fucking time, whether it's just them using their powers to do a basic thing or they're actually fighting the monsters, the deviants, or whatever. It all actually works. I really was impressed with the visual effects work, and I think it should set a template. I mean, this is the thing that most worries me with the potential controversy or whatever conflict around this movie between the critics and the Rotten Tomatoes and all this stuff. I want Marvel to take the right lessons from this. I hope the film, I know the billion-dollar corporation, the mega franchise doesn't really need my help, but I hope this film does well and the audiences really take to it so that Marvel's like, oh, you know what? We should work with Chloé Zhao. Oh, you know what? We don't need to make our films in front of green screen exclusively. We don't need to just cram everyone in a studio in Atlanta. We don't need to do like the shitty, cheap wire work. We can actually make a real film, and hopefully other filmmakers, again, if they want to, I don't want filmmakers to feel like I got to make a Marvel movie to get a big budget. I hope Christopher Nolan and Martin Scorsese and whomever is still able to get budgets to make original art, of course. But as long as Marvel's making movies, as long as I'm going to be invested in them, which I am, as many people are, I hope that we're able to get something like this. And that's where I'm going to leave it. Now, big spoiler warning. Do not listen to this until after you see the film. Okay. Post-credit scene. Holy shit. We got Harry Styles coming in as Eros, character I'm not really familiar with, but it does finally tie in the whole thing. I was wondering if they're going to tie in between Thanos and the Eternals. Yes, that's Thanos' brother. He's known as Star Fox. They mentioned that. That's also his name in the comics. I'm not that familiar with the characters. Enough said about it. You also have Pip, who I think is voiced by Patton Oswalt. But then the other scene with Kit Harington, aka Black Knight, I knew that the whole time, but I figure later got in the movie, okay, he's not showing up. They're not doing anything with him. That's post-credits bait. Of course it was. The second post-credit scene comes. He has the sword. Then you hear a voice and everybody in the theater loses their fucking mind. But guess what? Most people are in total conflict on who the voice is. My first instinct was Sam Jackson. Then I was like, nah, I don't think it's him. That doesn't quite add up. Then I was like, I heard someone say Jeffrey Wright, like the Watcher and What If. I'm like, that's crazy. And I was like, but it could be Jeffrey Wright, but it didn't sound too Jeffrey Wright. Then I'm thinking, oh, and this seems to be the leading theory, though. We'll see. And notice how I'm saying all black actors, though. I think the voice does have that, quality to it. Mahershala Ali, Blade. The only other one I could think of was Kang, Jonathan Majors, but it didn't quite sound like him. And for characters already appeared, I don't know why they wouldn't just show him if they really wanted to get that gas. Whereas Mahershala, they probably haven't figured out Blade's final look, and it's like, we'll just tease the voice. So makes sense. He's looking at a Blade, Black Knight and Blade, I think, have a comic history. There you go. There'll be a lot more to talk about that. When Dana sees the film, I might record an additional episode talking to her. But till then, guys, thank you. Another Cinphomaniac Rapid Fire in the hole.